Please help me. Somebody help me, please.
The cold didn't kill her first. The betrayal did. Then came the snow. New Year's Eve is supposed to be loud. It is supposed to be filled with laughter, popping champagne corks, and the warmth of a heater blasting against your skin. But for Kesha, the world was silent. Deadly silent. The only sound was the wet, sickening crunch of her boots sinking into 6 inches of fresh powder. She shivered. It wasn't a small tremble. It was a violent convulsion that started in her spine and rattled her teeth. Her coat was too thin. It was a stylish beige trench coat, bought 2 years ago when she was a size 6. Now, heavily pregnant and 9 months along, the buttons refused to close. They strained against her massive bump, leaving her stomach exposed to the biting wind. The wind was cruel. It sliced through her sweater like a razor blade. It numbed her skin instantly. But she kept one hand over her belly. She rubbed the tight skin in frantic circles. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Her voice cracked. It was raspy from crying. "I'm so sorry, Bean. Mommy's trying." The baby kicked. A hard, sharp thud against her ribs. It felt like a protest. Even the baby knew this was wrong. Kesha looked down the street. It was an endless tunnel of white and gray. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting long, creepy shadows on the snow. In the distance, she heard a pop. Then another. Fireworks. Somewhere people were counting down. Somewhere people were kissing at midnight. Here, she was dying. Her feet were blocks of ice. She couldn't feel her toes anymore. That terrified her. If she fell, she wouldn't get up. The snow would bury her. She reached into her pocket. Her fingers were stiff. They felt like clumsy sausages. She fumbled for her phone. The metal case burned her skin with its coldness. She brought the screen to her face. The light blinded her for a second. 3% battery. Panic clawed at her throat. She had one shot. Just one. She opened her contacts. Her vision blurred. Tears were freezing on her eyelashes, turning the world into a smear of light. She needed her brother. Marcus. Marcus would come. Marcus would tear the door off its hinges if he knew she was out here. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She tried to type his number from memory. Her fingers were shaking too hard. She missed a digit. She didn't notice. The cold had made her clumsy. She just needed help. She typed the message. Her thumbs slipped on the glass. "He put me out. I have nowhere to go. Please help. Send." The little bubble whooshed away. Kesha stopped walking. She leaned against a brick wall. The rough stone scraped her shoulder. She stared at the phone, willing it to ring, willing Marcus to call and scream that he was on his way. The 3 dots appeared. She let out a sob. He saw it. He was typing. The phone buzzed. A gray bubble appeared. "Who is this?" "Send your location." Kesha frowned. It was a curt reply. Marcus usually started with sis? Or what happened? But maybe he was panicked. Maybe he was driving. She didn't have time to question it. The wind picked up. It howled like a wounded animal, throwing a handful of icy snow into her face. She typed her location. The GPS pin dropped. Send. She stared at the screen. 2% battery. "Please," she whimpered. The cold was moving deeper now. It wasn't just on her skin, it was in her bones. Her blood felt like slush. She slid down the brick wall. Her legs gave out. She landed in the snow with a soft thud. It soaked instantly through her leggings. She curled around her belly, a protective ball, a mother trying to be a shield. The phone went black. Dead. Now, she was truly alone in the dark. Hey, my dangerous dreamers. You're probably wondering how a heavily pregnant woman ended up freezing on the streets on New Year's Eve, while her husband sat inside warm and cozy. To understand this betrayal, we have to go back 8 hours. Stick around, because you won't believe how he pays for this. 8 hours earlier, the house didn't smell like snow. It smelled like heaven. The air was thick with the scent of roasted garlic, rosemary, and slow-cooked beef. The oven hummed, radiating a heat that made the kitchen feel like a sauna. Kesha wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her wrist. She was exhausted, not just tired, bone-deep weary. She stood at the granite island, chopping vegetables, carrots, celery, onions. The knife made a rhythmic thwack, thwack, thwack against the wood. Her ankles were swollen. They looked like balloons stuffing into her slippers. Her lower back throbbed with a dull, constant ache, like a toothache in her spine. Kesha. The voice came from the living room. It was whiny, nasal, high-pitched. Jim. Kesha closed her eyes for a second. She took a deep breath. She pasted a smile on her face. Yes, honey? Where are the wings? The guys are going to be here in an hour. You said you'd have the honey bobbitt glaze done by 4. Jim walked into the kitchen. He wasn't a monster physically. He was average. Sandy blonde hair, a soft jawline, and eyes that always looked a little watery. He wore a crisp blue button-down shirt. He looked fresh. Rested. He smelled like expensive cologne and hair gel. He looked at Kesha like she was an appliance that was malfunctioning. The roast is in, Kesha said. She pointed the knife at the oven. The mac and cheese is bubbling. I'm starting the glaze now, Jim. I just needed to sit down for 5 minutes. Jim scoffed. He walked over to the fridge and grabbed a beer. The bottle hissed as he popped the cap. Sit down? He laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Kesha, it's New Year's Eve. This party is important for my promotion. My boss is coming. You know that. You can sit down next year. He took a swig of beer and leaned against the counter, watching her. He didn't offer to chop a carrot. He didn't offer to stir a pot. He just watched. My feet are hurting, Jim, she said softly. She went back to chopping. The baby is sitting low today. It hurts to stand. You're always hurting, Jim muttered. He rolled his eyes. Pregnant women work in fields, Kesha. My mom had 4 kids and she never complained this much. You act like you're the first woman to ever have a baby. The words stung. They were small cuts, but Kesha was covered in thousands of them. She focused on the onions. Don't cry. Don't let him see you cry. The onions blurred her vision anyway. I need you to vacuum the living room again, Jim added casually. I saw a crumb near the sofa. Kesha stopped chopping. She looked at him. I vacuumed an hour ago. I scrubbed the baseboards on my hands and knees, Jim. I can't get down there again. I can't get back up. Jim slammed the beer bottle onto the counter. The glass clinked dangerously. God. He threw his hands in the air. Why are you so difficult? Everything is a production with you. My back. My feet. My ankles. I work all day to pay for this house, Kesha. To pay for that food you're cooking. The least you can do is keep it clean. He worked? Kesha bit her tongue. Kesha had worked 2 jobs until her 3rd trimester. She paid the down payment on this house. But Jim liked to rewrite history. I'll vacuum, she whispered. It was easier to agree. It was always easier to just do it. The next 4 hours were a blur of misery. Kesha moved like a zombie. She vacuumed. She dusted. She basted the roast. She glazed the wings. The house filled with guests. Loud laughter, clinking glasses. The smell of alcohol mixed with the food. Jim was charming. He was the perfect host. He slapped backs. He poured wine. He told jokes. Oh, Kesha? He'd call out in front of everyone. Can you bring more ice? Sweetheart? The dip is low. He treated her like a waitress. A heavily pregnant waitress who wasn't getting tipped. Kesha waddled back and forth. Her legs were trembling. She felt dizzy. The heat in the kitchen was unbearable. She hadn't eaten all day. She had been too busy feeding everyone else. Around 10 p.m., disaster struck. Kesha was carrying a heavy ceramic platter of the honey bubbitt wings. They were piping hot. The sauce was sticky and gleaming. She walked into the living room. Her foot caught on the edge of the rug. It happened in slow motion. She pitched forward. She tried to correct her balance, but her belly threw her center of gravity off. She twisted to avoid falling on her stomach. The platter flew from her hands. Crash. The ceramic shattered against the hardwood floor. 30 sticky, saucy chicken wings exploded across the room. A wave of barbecue sauce splattered onto Jim's pristine khaki pants. It landed on his suede loafers. The room went silent. The music seemed to stop. 20 pairs of eyes stared at Kesha. She gasped. She clutched the side of the sofa to keep from hitting the floor. "Oh my God. I'm sorry, I tripped." Jim didn't move. He looked down at his shoes. He looked at the orange stain spreading on his pants. His face turned a dark, ugly shade of red. A vein popped in his forehead. "You clumsy cow," he hissed. The room gasped. A few guests looked away, uncomfortable. Kesha froze. "Jim, it was an accident." "I'll clean it up, no," Jim said. His voice was shaking with rage. "You've ruined it. You ruin everything. Look at you." He gestured at her. She was sweating. Her hair was frizzy from the kitchen steam. She had a stain on her apron. She looked exhausted. "You're an embarrassment," Jim said loudly. He wanted everyone to hear. He wanted to humiliate her. "I have my boss here. I have my colleagues here. And you're stumbling around like a drunk hippo throwing food everywhere." Tears spilled over Kesha's cheeks. "Jim, please. I'm tired, I don't care." Jim screamed. He stepped toward her. He pointed at the door. "Get out." Kesha blinked. "What?" "Get out," Jim repeated. His eyes were cold. "Dead. I don't want to look at you. You're ruining the vibe. Get out of my house." "Jim," Kesha's voice trembled. "It's New Year's Eve. It's freezing outside. I don't have a car. I don't have a coat down here. Not my problem," Jim sneered. "Maybe the cold will wake you up. Maybe it'll teach you some respect." He grabbed her arm. His fingers dug into her flesh. He dragged her toward the front door. "Jim, stop, you're hurting me," Kesha cried. The guests did nothing. They watched. They swirled their wine. They didn't want to get involved in a domestic dispute. Cowards. All of them. Jim opened the front door. A blast of icy air hit them. Snow swirled into the hallway. "Go cool off," Jim said. He shoved her. Kesha stumbled out onto the porch. She grabbed the railing to stop herself from falling down the stairs. Slam. The door shut behind her. The lock clicked. Kesha stood there, stunned. She was wearing leggings, a sweater, and slippers. No coat, no boots, no purse. She pounded on the door. "Jim. Jim, please. The baby." "It's freezing." From inside she heard laughter. Someone had cracked a joke. The music turned back up. She waited. 10 minutes. 20. He wasn't coming back. She found her old trench coat in the mudroom closet outside, the one they used for gardening clothes. It was thin. It barely fit. She pulled it on. She found a pair of old rain boots by the door. She had her phone in her sweater pocket. That was it. She walked down the driveway. She looked back at the house. The windows glowed with warmth. She could see silhouettes moving inside. They were eating her food. They were drinking her wine. And she was walking into the snow to die. Darkness was winning. Kesha's head felt heavy. Too heavy. It dipped forward, her chin hitting her chest. She couldn't feel her nose anymore. She couldn't feel her ears. The pain in her legs had stopped, which was worse than the hurting. The numbness was a warning. The end was coming. She slumped sideways in the snow. Her cheek pressed against the frozen slush. It should have been shocking. It should have burned. But it felt like a soft pillow. "Marcus." She whispered into the ice. "Please." The wind howled over her body. It buried her legs in a fresh drift of white. She closed her eyes. The blackness was warm. It was inviting. Then the ground shook. It started as a vibration in the pavement against her cheek. A low, deep thrumming, like a heartbeat, but louder. Vroom. The sound tore through the silence of the night. It wasn't just one engine. It was a symphony of horsepower. Kesha forced one eye open. Light flooded the street. Blinding, white lead beams cut through the falling snow like lasers. They turned the night into day. The roar grew deafening. Tires crunched aggressively over the ice. 1 car. 2 cars. 3. 4. They didn't park. They swarmed. 3 massive black Cadillac Escalades screeched to a halt, boxing in the front of Jim's house. They blocked the driveway. They blocked the street. They blocked the world. In the center of the formation, a sleek, silver Bentley flying spur glided to a stop. It looked like a shark swimming in a pool of minnows. The engine purred with a dangerous, expensive rhythm. Doors flew open. Men poured out of the SUVs. They moved with military precision. They wore black suits. They wore earpieces. They didn't look like police. They didn't look like paramedics. They looked like death. The back door of the Bentley opened. A shoe stepped out. It wasn't a winter boot. It was a dress shoe. Black Italian leather, polished to a mirror shine. It crunched into the dirty slush without hesitation. A man rose from the back seat. He was tall, imposing. He wore a charcoal gray wool coat that reached his knees. The collar was turned up against the wind. His hair was jet black, styled back perfectly, defying the storm. He didn't look at the house. He didn't look at his men. He scanned the ground. His eyes were sharp, predatory. He spotted the lump in the snow, the beige trench coat, the curl of a body protecting an unborn child. He moved. Wait, before we see what the dawn does to this husband, have you ever been kicked when you were down? If you want to see this husband get exactly what he deserves, hit that like button right now. And if you love stories where the villain gets destroyed, smash that subscribe button so you never miss a moment of justice. Now, let's see what happens. Don Lee didn't run. Kings don't run. He strode across the ice with a terrifying purpose. His strides were long. He closed the distance in seconds. He dropped to his knees in the snow. He didn't care about his pants. He didn't care about the wetness. "Hey," he said. His voice was deep. It rumbled in his chest, vibrating against the cold air. It wasn't loud, but it commanded attention. "Open your eyes." Kesha struggled. She lifted her lashes. The man was a blur, a beautiful, dangerous blur. "Marcus?" She croaked. Her teeth chattered violently. You came." Don Lee's jaw tightened. A muscle jumped in his cheek. He saw her lips. They were blue. He saw her hands. They were raw and red, clutching her belly. He didn't correct her. "I'm here," he said softly. He stripped off his charcoal coat. Underneath, he wore a tailored black suit. A silver dragon was embroidered on the collar of his shirt. He wrapped the heavy wool coat around her. It was still warm from his body. It smelled of oud wood, expensive tobacco, and power. The scent hit Kesha. It made her dizzy. It smelled like safety. "Can you stand?" Dawn asked. "Can't. Feel. Legs," she mumbled. Her eyes rolled back slightly. "Okay," Dawn said. "I've got you." He slid his arms under her, one behind her back, one under her knees. He lifted her. She was heavy with the pregnancy, but to him, she weighed nothing. He stood up effortlessly. He cradled her high against his chest, shielding her face from the wind with his shoulder. "Get the car heated." Don barked at one of his men. "Now." "Yes, boss." The man scrambled. Don turned to carry her to the Bentley. "Hey." The shout came from the house. The front door banged open. Jim stood on the porch. He held a glass of wine in his hand. He looked annoyed. He looked like a man whose party had been interrupted by a noise complaint. "What is going on out here?" Jim yelled. He squinted against the headlights. "Who are you people? Turn those lights off. You're blinding my guests." Don Lee stopped. He didn't turn around immediately. He adjusted Kesha in his arms, making sure her head was supported. "Keep the door open," Don told his driver. He handed Kesha to the driver. "Put her in the back. Turn the heat to max. Do not let her go to sleep." "Boss." The driver hesitated. "What about you?" Don turned slowly. He faced the house. He faced Jim. "I have some trash to take out," Don said. He walked toward the porch. He didn't walk fast. He walked with the slow, inevitable momentum of a glacier. Jim stepped down the first stair. He finally saw the men. He saw the size of them. He saw the bulges under their jackets that were definitely not wallets. Jim's annoyance flickered. Fear began to replace it. "Look, buddy," Jim stammered. He took a sip of wine for courage. "I don't know who you are. If you're here for the tow truck request, you're late. Get off my property." Don stopped at the bottom of the stairs. He looked up at Jim. Don's face was a mask of cold fury. His eyes were black pits. There was no mercy in them, no humanity. Just pure, unadulterated violence waiting to be unleashed. "Is that your wife?" Don asked. His voice was quiet, deadly quiet. Jim blinked. He looked toward the Bentley where the driver was tucking Kesha in. "Her?" Jim scoffed. He waved his hand dismissively. "That's... yeah. Technically. But we're done. I kicked her out. She's crazy. Hormonal. You know how women get." Jim tried to laugh. He wanted this scary man to be on his side. He wanted to bond over crazy women. "She made a scene at my party," Jim explained, gaining confidence. "Spilled food everywhere. I told her to go cool off. She's just being dramatic, sitting in the snow like that." Don took a step up. Then another. He was face to face with Jim now. Don was 3 inches taller. He loomed over the husband. "You kicked a pregnant woman out into a blizzard," Don stated. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. "It's not a blizzard," Jim argued weakly. He took a step back. "It's just some snow. Look, man, this is a private matter. She's my wife. I can do what I want." Don moved faster than Jim could blink. His hand shot out. He grabbed Jim by the throat. Crack. The wine glass fell from Jim's hand. It shattered on the porch steps. Red wine splattered over the snow, looking exactly like blood. Don slammed Jim against the siding of the house. The wood groaned. Jim gagged. His feet dangled an inch off the ground. He clawed at Don's hand. It was like clawing at a steel beam. Don's grip didn't loosen. It tightened. "Listen to me," Don whispered. He leaned in close. Jim could smell the danger on him. He could see the intricate tattoo of a dragon's tail creeping up Don's neck, disappearing behind his ear. "You have made a mistake," Don said. "A fatal mistake." Jim's face turned purple. His eyes bulged. He tried to speak. Can't breathe. "You said she is your wife," Don continued. His voice was smooth, calm, and terrifying, "but you threw her away. You discarded her like garbage because she inconvenienced you." Don squeezed harder. Jim's vision started to spot. "When you throw something away," Don hissed, "you lose ownership of it. Do you understand?" Jim nodded frantically. He would agree to anything. Don leaned closer. His lips brushed Jim's ear. "She is not your wife anymore," Don said. "She is mine." The words hung in the freezing air. They were heavy, absolute. "If you ever come near her," Don whispered, "if you ever call her, if you ever look at her or the child she carries." Don pulled back slightly to look Jim in the eye. "I will not just kill you, Jim Smith. I will peel the skin from your bones while you are still awake. I will make you beg for hell." Don released him. Jim collapsed. He fell to his knees on the porch, gasping for air. He coughed violently, clutching his throat. The guests inside the house were pressed against the window. They were watching. They looked terrified. Don straightened his cuffs. He brushed an invisible speck of dust from his suit jacket. "Enjoy your party," Don said. He turned his back on Jim. He walked down the stairs. He walked through the snow, back to the Bentley. Jim wheezed on the porch. He watched the man walk away. He was shaking. Not from the cold. From pure, primal terror. Don slid into the back seat of the car. The interior was warm. It smelled of leather. Kesha was slumped in the corner, wrapped in his coat. Her eyes were closed. She was shivering, but color was returning to her cheeks. Don looked at her. He reached out. He brushed a wet strand of hair from her forehead. His touch was surprisingly gentle. He pulled his phone from his pocket. He looked at the text message again. "He put me out. I have nowhere to go. Please help." He didn't know her name. He didn't know who she was. He had simply received a wrong number text in the middle of a business meeting. Most men would have ignored it. But Don Lee was not most men. And now that he had touched her, now that he had saved her, the beast inside him had awakened. "Let's go," Don ordered. "Where to, boss?" the driver asked. "The hospital?" Don looked at Kesha's sleeping face. He pulled the coat tighter around her. "No," Don said. "Take us home." The Bentley roared to life. The convoy of SUVs fell into formation. They peeled away from the curb, leaving tire tracks in the fresh snow. They left Jim Smith kneeling on his porch, covered in wine stains, watching the only good thing in his life disappear into the night. Jim was alone. And for the first time in his life, he was afraid of the dark. The world was soft. That was the first thing Kesha noticed. There was no wind, no biting cold, no crunching snow. She was floating on a cloud. She shifted slightly. The fabric against her skin was silk, cool, smooth, and impossibly expensive. She inhaled. The air didn't smell like ozone and exhaust. It smelled of sandalwood and sterile cleanliness. She opened her eyes. She wasn't on the street. She wasn't in heaven. She was in a room the size of her entire house. The walls were glass. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city skyline. It was night, but the city glowed below like a bed of scattered diamonds. From up here, the blizzard looked like harmless confetti. Kesha tried to sit up. A sharp pain shot through her lower back. She gasped. "Stay down." The voice came from the foot of the bed. It was deep, velvety. Kesha froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She pulled the thick duvet up to her chin. Don Lee was there. He was sitting on the edge of the mattress. He had discarded his suit jacket. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the base of his throat. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows. His forearms were covered in ink, intricate black lines of dragons and smoke that moved when he flexed his muscles. In his hands, he held a steaming white towel. "Your feet were frozen," Don said quietly. He didn't look at her face. He was looking at her swollen ankles. "I had to warm them slowly. If I used hot water, it would have damaged the tissue." Kesha stared at him. This terrifying man. This man who had choked her husband on her front porch. He was holding her foot like it was made of glass. He wrapped the warm towel around her left foot. He began to massage the arch with his thumb. Kesha flinched. You don't have to do that." Don stopped. He looked up. His eyes were dark, endless. But the rage was gone. Now there was only a strange, intense curiosity. "You cannot reach your feet," Don stated. "You are pregnant. Someone has to do it." He went back to rubbing. His hands were large, rough, and calloused, but his touch was incredibly gentle. He found the sore spot in her heel and pressed. Kesha let out an involuntary moan of relief. The tension in her legs began to melt. "Where am I?" she whispered. "My home," Don said. "You are safe here. But why?" Keshia's voice trembled. Tears pricked her eyes again. She was so tired of crying. "I sent a wrong number. I'm nobody. I'm just a woman who got kicked out. Why did you come for me? Why did you bring me here?" Dawn finished with her left foot. He picked up the right one. He wrapped it in the towel. He paused. He looked out at the city lights. "I was in a meeting," Dawn said softly, "with men who want to take everything I have. It was loud. It was full of lies." He turned his gaze back to her. "Then my phone buzzed. I have nowhere to go. Please help." Dawn released her foot. He crawled up the bed. He moved like a panther. Slow. Predatory. Controlled. Kesha pressed herself back against the headboard. She should have been afraid. But she wasn't. Dawn stopped when he was inches from her. He reached out. He placed his large tattooed hand over her belly. The baby kicked, hard. It high-fived his palm. Dawn's eyes widened slightly. A flicker of wonder crossed his stoic face. "You called me," Dawn whispered. His voice was rough with emotion. "For 30 years, no one has ever asked me for help. They only ask for money. Or mercy. You asked for me." He looked at her belly. He spoke to the child, not to her. I have done many bad things, Dawn murmured to the unborn baby. I have burned cities. I have ended bloodlines. But I make you this vow, little one. He leaned in, his forehead almost touching the silk blanket covering her stomach. As long as I draw breath, you will never be cold again. No one will ever shut a door in your face. If the world tries to freeze you, I will burn the world to keep you warm. Keshia let out a sob. It broke the spell. Dawn pulled back. He wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Sleep now, he commanded softly. The doctor will be here in the morning. Rest. He stood up. He walked to the door. He turned off the main light, leaving only the soft glow of the city. Good night, Keshia. He knew her name. She hadn't told him. The door clicked shut. Keshia lay in the dark. She was warm. She was safe. But safety is a strange thing to a woman who has been hunted. It feels like a trick. Keshia woke up 3 hours later. The silence of the penthouse was heavy. It pressed against her ears. She sat up. Her body ached, but the numbness was gone. The warmth of the bed was suffocating now. Her mind started to race. Who is he? What does he want? Men don't do things for free. Jim's voice echoed in her head. You're a burden. You're difficult. You ruin everything. She looked around the room. It was too nice. Too expensive. She didn't belong here. She was a broke, single, soon-to-be mother wearing borrowed leggings and a man's t-shirt. Don Lee was a dangerous man. She had seen what he did to Jim. What would happen when he got bored of playing nurse? What would happen when the baby cried and woke him up? He would kick her out, just like Jim. And next time, she might not survive the cold. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in her chest. She needed to leave. She needed to find Marcus. She needed to be with family, not a stranger who choked people for fun. She slid out of bed. Her legs were wobbly, but they held. She saw her clothes folded neatly on a chair. Her leggings, her sweater. They had been washed and dried. She dressed quickly. Her heart was thumping a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Thump, thump, thump. She tiptoed to the bedroom door. She cracked it open. The hallway was long and dark, lined with modern art that looked like shadows trapped in frames. She heard a voice. It was coming from the living room down the hall. It was Don. He wasn't whispering anymore. He was speaking Korean. His voice was hard, guttural, sharp edges on every syllable. Kesha crept closer. She pressed her back against the wall. She needed to know if the coast was clear. Don switched to English. He sounded frustrated, angry. I don't care about the consequences, Don growled. Silence. The person on the other end was speaking. She is a problem, Don snapped. She is a liability. I cannot have distractions right now. Not with the bratva moving in. Kesha's hand flew to her mouth. She stifled a gasp. She is a problem. She is a liability. He was talking about her. Of course he was. She was the heavily pregnant stranger in his bed. She was the distraction. Don paced across the living room floor. She heard his heavy footsteps. Get rid of her, Don ordered into the phone. Tonight. I want it done clean. No traces. The blood drained from Kesha's face. Get rid of her. He wasn't going to kick her out. He was going to kill her. Clean. No traces. She was going to disappear. Kesha turned around. Tears streamed down her face silently. She was stupid. So stupid. She had trusted a monster because he gave her a foot rub. She looked at the elevator at the end of the hall. It required a key card. She didn't have one. But she saw a green exit sign. The stairwell. No, she couldn't walk down 40 flights of stairs. Then she saw it. The service elevator. Kesha had worked housekeeping at the Ritz for 3 years to pay for college. She knew luxury buildings. There was always a service elevator for the maids and the trash. It usually didn't require a keycard for the ground floor, so the staff could come and go. She moved. She waddled as fast as she could, clutching her belly. She felt like a thief in the night. She reached the service door. She pushed it open. It was heavy. The service elevator was there. It smelled of garbage and lemon cleaner. She pressed the button. Ding! The doors slid open. Oh, Keshia, no. Never run from the monster who loves you to the world that hates you. She thinks she's saving him, but she's walking straight into a trap set by the one person she thought she was free of. Keshia stepped inside. She pressed the button for the lobby. The doors closed. She leaned against the metal wall and sobbed. She was safe from the penthouse. She was escaping the liability. But she didn't know that Don Lee had been talking about a female assassin from the Zherdev Bratva who had been tailing him. He had ordered her execution, not Keshia's. Keshia wiped her eyes. The elevator descended. Down, down, down. When the doors opened at the bottom, she wasn't in the marble lobby. She was in the loading dock, the back exit. It was dark. It was freezing. The wind swirled in through the open bay doors. Kesha pulled her thin coat tighter. She stepped out into the alleyway. Okay, she whispered to herself. Okay. We find a taxi. We go to Marcus. She took 2 steps into the snow. A shadow detached itself from the wall. Well, a voice sneered. Look what the cat dragged out. Kesha froze. She knew that voice. It wasn't Jim. It was worse. She turned slowly. Standing by a dumpster, smoking a cigarette, was a man in a dirty leather jacket. He had a gold tooth that glinted in the streetlight. Ray, her ex-boyfriend from 5 years ago. The one who got her into debt. The one who sold drugs. The one she had run away from to marry Jim. Ray? Kesha breathed. Ray grinned. He dropped his cigarette and crushed it under his boot. Jim called me, Ray said. He took a step toward her. Said his crazy wife ran off. Said he'd pay $5,000 to anyone who brought her back so he could. Teach her a lesson. Ray pulled a pair of zip ties from his pocket. And look at that. Ray laughed. You walked right out the back door. It's my lucky day. Kesha backed up. She hit the brick wall of the building. She looked up at the penthouse, 40 floors above. The light was on. Don Lee was up there, the monster who wanted to keep her warm, and she had just run straight into the wolf's mouth. Ray lunged. The smell was the first thing to hit her. Not snow, not expensive cologne, old motor oil, rust, rat droppings. Keshia was thrown onto the concrete floor. She landed hard on her hip. A scream tore from her throat, but it was muffled by the dirty rag Ray had tied around her mouth. She scrambled backward. Her hands were zip-tied behind her back. Her shoulders screamed in protest. She looked around. It was a warehouse, a graveyard for old machines. The windows were high up and broken, letting the freezing wind whistle through like a banshee. Well, look who decided to join the party. Keshia's eyes widened. She knew that whine. Jim stepped out from the shadows. He wasn't wearing his party clothes anymore. He looked disheveled, sweaty. His eyes darted around the room nervously. Jim? Keshia tried to say against the gag. Ray walked over and ripped the rag from her mouth. It burned her lips. Jim. Keshia gasped. She tried to sit up, but her belly was too heavy. Jim, help me. Ray kidnapped me. Shut up, Jim snapped. He didn't look at her, he looked at the floor. I know. I told him to. Keshia froze. The cold of the warehouse floor seeped into her bones. What? I had to, Keshia. Jim yelled. He sounded like a petulant child. I owe money, okay? A lot of money. Gambling. Stocks. It doesn't matter. He pointed a shaking finger at a dark corner of the room. Mr. Vargas said he'd clear the debt. He just wanted leverage. Someone to trade. A slow clap echoed from the darkness. Clap, clap, clap. A man stepped into the dim light. Vargas. He was short, stocky, with a neck as thick as a tree trunk. He wore a heavy fur coat and gold rings on every finger. He looked like a bulldog that ate nails for breakfast. I asked for collateral, Jim, Vargas rumbled. His voice sounded like gravel in a blender. I didn't think you'd actually bring me your pregnant wife. Vargas looked at Keshia. He looked at her belly. He shook his head with a twisted sort of respect. "You are a cold bastard, Jim," Vargas laughed. "Even for me. Just take her." Jim screamed. "Take her and wipe the debt. The guy she was with. That Asian guy. He's rich. He'll pay for her. Just let me go." Keshia stared at her husband, the man she had cooked for, the man she had loved. He wasn't just mean. He was weak. He was a maggot. He had sold her and his own child to save his own skin. "Jim," she whispered. "My water. The baby." A sharp pain ripped through her abdomen. It wasn't a kick. It was a tightening. A vice grip squeezing her insides. Keshia cried out. She curled into a ball. Splash. Warm fluid soaked her leggings. It pooled on the dirty concrete floor, mixing with the dust and oil. "Oh God," Ray said, backing away. "That's disgusting. She's faking it." Jim yelled. He stomped his foot. "Stop it, Keshia. Stop being dramatic. You're just trying to stall." Keshia couldn't speak. Another wave of pain hit her. Harder this time. It felt like her hips were being pulled apart. "I'm not," she gasped. "The baby, it's coming." Vargas frowned. He pulled a heavy pistol from his waistband. "This gets messy," Vargas grunted. "Call the Asian guy. Tell him if he doesn't bring $2 million in cash in 30 minutes, he gets the girl in pieces. And tell him to bring a mop." High above the city, the penthouse was silent. Don Lee walked into the bedroom. He carried a tray, a bowl of warm soup, a glass of water, some crackers. "Keshia," he said softly, "you need to eat." He looked at the bed. The duvet was thrown back. The pillow still held the indentation of her head. But the bed was empty. Don didn't drop the tray. He didn't gasp. He went still. He set the tray down on the nightstand with terrifying precision. Not a drop of soup spilled. He walked to the wall panel. He tapped the screen. The security feed came up. He watched. 02:14 am. Keshia leaves the room. 02:16 am. Service elevator. 02:19 am. Loading dock. 02:20 am. Ray grabs her. Don watched the screen. He saw the terror in her eyes. He saw the zip ties. He saw the car speed away. He paused the video on the license plate. He pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. "Track it," Don said. His voice was devoid of all emotion. It was the voice of the Reaper. "You have 30 seconds." He walked into his walk-in closet. He pushed a hidden panel behind the suits. The wall slid open. Inside, it wasn't clothes. It was steel. Guns. Rows of them. Black, sleek, and oiled. Don stripped off his white dress shirt. He put on a black tactical undershirt. He strapped a Kevlar vest over his chest. It clicked into place tight against his ribs. He grabbed 2 Sig Sauer P226s. He checked the magazines. Full. He holstered them. He grabbed a combat knife. He sheathed it at his hip. He put his suit jacket back on over the vest. He buttoned it. He fixed his cuffs. He looked in the mirror. The man looking back wasn't a businessman. He wasn't a savior. He was a monster. The monster Keshia had run from. And now, he was going to show the world exactly why they should be afraid of the dark. His phone buzzed. "Got them, boss." An old warehouse in the industrial district, owned by the Vargas cartel. "Vargas," Don whispered. He knew Vargas. A small man with a big ego. "Send the team," Don said, "but do not engage. I am going in first." "Boss," the voice on the phone hesitated. "They will be heavily armed." Don Lee picked up a silencer. He screwed it onto the barrel of his gun. "Good," Don said. "I don't want it to be too easy." The warehouse was filled with the sound of Kesha's screams. The contractions were 3 minutes apart. She was sweating, shivering, and bleeding. "Shut her up." Jim paced back and forth. "God, she's so annoying." "You shut up," Vargas snapped. He was checking his watch. 5 more minutes. "If he's not here, we start cutting fingers." Ray was standing by the large metal bay doors, smoking another cigarette. "You think he's coming alone?" "He's a businessman," Vargas scoffed. "He'll send a courier with a bag of cash. These guys are soft. They don't get their hands dirt." Boom. The world exploded. The metal bay doors didn't open. They disintegrated. A black armored SUV smashed through the steel like it was tin foil. The noise was deafening. Metal screeched. Glass shattered. The SUV didn't stop. It plowed into a stack of crates, sending wood splinters flying like shrapnel. Snow swirled into the warehouse through the gaping hole in the wall. Vargas raised his gun. Fire. Kill them. Ray fumbled for his weapon. The driver's side door of the SUV flew open. Don Lee stepped out. He didn't take cover. He stood in the open, amidst the dust and the snow. He held a pistol in each hand. 2 silenced shots whispered through the air. Silenced whispers of death. Ray dropped, a bullet hole in the center of his forehead. He didn't even have time to be surprised. Don walked forward. He fired as he walked. His arms didn't shake. His eyes didn't blink. 2 more muffled cracks. 2 of Vargas's guards went down. 1 shot to the chest, 1 to the throat. Jim shrieked. He scrambled backward, slipping in the oil. He saw Keshia lying on the floor, groaning in pain. Jim grabbed her. He hauled her up by her hair. Keshia screamed, a raw animal sound. Back off. Jim yelled. He pressed a small knife to Keshia's throat. I'll kill her. I swear to God, I'll kill her. Don stopped. He was 20 feet away. He stood amidst the bodies of the men he had just executed. He looked at Jim. He looked at the knife pressing into the soft skin of Keshia's neck. Let her go, Don said. His voice was calm. It was the calm of the eye of the storm. No. Jim was crying now. Snot ran down his face. You have money. Give me the money. Don holstered one gun. He raised the other. He aimed at Jim. She is in labor, Jim, Don said. She is having your child right now. And you are holding a knife to her throat. I don't care. Jim sobbed. I just want to live. Don's eyes narrowed. You won't. Bang. Don fired. He didn't aim for the head. The bullet struck Jim's right elbow. The joint vaporized. Crack. Jim's arm bent backward at a sickening angle. The knife clattered to the floor. Ash! Jim howled. He fell to his knees, clutching his shattered arm. Keshia collapsed back onto the concrete. She gasped for air. Don, don't move. Vargas stepped out from behind a pillar. He had a shotgun. He aimed it directly at Keshia's head. Drop the gun. Vargas roared. Drop it, or I paint the floor with her brains. Don froze. He looked at Vargas. He saw the finger tightening on the trigger. He saw the madness in Vargas's eyes. He couldn't shoot Vargas without risking Keshia. The angle was wrong. Don slowly opened his hand. His gun clattered to the floor. Kick it away, Vargas sneered. Don kicked the gun. It slid across the ice. Good, Vargas laughed. Now, get on your knees. I'm going to enjoy this. Don looked at Keshia. Her eyes were wide with terror. She was looking at him like he was her last hope. He was. I said get on your knees. Vargas shouted. Don lowered himself slowly. One knee, then the other. He kept his eyes on Vargas. He waited. He waited for the split second of arrogance, the moment every villain takes to gloat. You think you're tough? Vargas stepped closer. You come into my house? I'm going to kill you, then I'm going to kill the girl, and then... Vargas glanced down at Jim, who was still wailing on the floor. Now. Don didn't stand up. He moved his hand to his hip. The combat knife flew. It was a blur of silver in the dim light. A sickening thud. The knife buried itself to the hilt in Vargas's throat. Vargas gagged. The shotgun fired, but the blast went wild, hitting the ceiling. He clawed at his neck. Blood sprayed over his fur coat. He toppled forward, face first into the dirt. Dead. Silence fell over the warehouse. The only sound was the wind howling through the broken wall and Jim's pathetic whimpering. Don stood up. He didn't look at Vargas. He didn't look at Jim. He ran to Keshia. He fell to his knees in the slush, the oil and the blood. He didn't care about his suit. He didn't care about the gore. Kesha, he breathed. He gathered her into his arms. She was shaking violently. Her skin was clammy. You came, she sobbed. I ran away, and you came back. Don brushed the hair from her sweating forehead. His hands, usually so steady, were trembling slightly. I told you, Don whispered fiercely. He pressed his forehead against hers. I told you I would burn the world. Kesha gripped his lapels. Her knuckles were white. The baby, she screamed as another contraction hit. Don, the baby is coming, now. Don looked around the filthy warehouse. He looked at the dead bodies. He looked at the snow blowing in. Not here, Don growled. Not in this filth. He scooped her up. He stood, carrying her and the weight of their future in his arms. He stepped over Jim. Jim looked up, his face gray with pain. Help me, please. Don paused. He looked down at the man who had kicked his pregnant wife into a blizzard. You wanted to be alone, Don said coldly. Don walked toward the SUV. The police are coming. Tell them what happened. If you survive the blood loss. He placed Kesha in the passenger seat of the ruined SUV. He leaned in and kissed her forehead. Hang on, Don said. We are going home. The engine roared like a dying beast. The battered SUV tore down the highway. The windshield was cracked. The side door was hanging by a hinge. Snow swirled inside the cabin, mixing with the heat blasting from the vents. Don Lee drove with one hand. His other hand was gripping Keshia's hand so hard his knuckles were white. Hold on, Don commanded. His voice was tight. We are 10 minutes from the private clinic. Just hold on. I can't. Keshia screamed. Her body arched off the leather seat. A guttural, primal sound ripped from her throat. It wasn't a choice. It was nature taking over. Dawn. She's coming. I can feel the head. Don looked at her. He saw the terror in her eyes. He saw the way her body was convulsing. He slammed on the brakes. The SUV skidded. Tires shrieked against the black ice. The heavy vehicle fishtailed, then slammed to a halt under the concrete shelter of an overpass. Don killed the engine. He unbuckled his seatbelt. Okay, he said. He took a deep breath. The mask of the killer vanished. The mask of the protector slid into place. Okay. He vaulted into the back seat area, pushing the front passenger seat down so Keshia could recline. It's okay, Don said. I'm here. I'm scared, Kesha sobbed. She was gripping the dashboard. It hurts so much, look at me. Don framed her face with his hands. His palms were rough, still speckled with dried blood from the warehouse. But his eyes were steady. You are strong, Don said. You survived the cold. You survived the fire. You can do this. Push, Kesha screamed. She bore down. Don moved to catch the baby. He had no gloves. He had no towels except for the expensive silk handkerchief in his pocket. He pulled it out. I see her, Don whispered. His voice broke with wonder. Keshia, I see her. Get her out. Kesha wailed. One more push. The hardest push. Kesha felt like she was splitting in two. She squeezed her eyes shut. She thought about Jim. She thought about the snow. She thought about dying on the street. And she pushed the darkness away. A loud, healthy cry. The sound filled the car. It was louder than the wind. It was louder than the sirens in the distance. It was the sound of life. Don Lee held the tiny, slippery bundle in his large hands. He looked down. His hands were stained with the blood of men who had tried to hurt her. Dark, red stains on his knuckles. But resting in his palms was a creature so pure, so white with vernix, that she seemed to glow. The contrast stole his breath. Violence and innocence, separated by a heartbeat. It's a girl, Don whispered. Tears streamed down his stoic face, cutting through the grime. Keshia. It's a daughter. He used his combat knife, the same knife that had ended Vargas, to carefully, gently cut the shoelace from his boot. He tied the cord. He cut it. He wrapped the baby in his tactical vest. It was still warm from his body heat. He handed the bundle to Kesha. Kesha took her daughter. She pressed the baby to her chest. The crying stopped instantly. The baby knew her mother's heartbeat. "She's warm," Kesha wept, kissing the baby's head. "She's so warm." Don leaned over. He kissed Kesha's sweat-slicked forehead. He kissed the baby's tiny fist. "I promised you," Dawn murmured against her skin. "I will burn the world to keep you warm. I burned it down, Kesha. And now, we build a new one." Back at the warehouse, the cold had returned. Jim lay on the dirty floor. His arm was a ruin of shattered bone and torn flesh. The pain was blinding. A white-hot poker jammed into his elbow. But the cold was worse. The wind whistled through the hole Don Lee had smashed in the wall. Snow drifted in, covering the dead body of Vargas. It started to cover Jim's legs. He tried to crawl. He couldn't. He was too weak from blood loss. In the distance he heard sirens. Blue and red lights flashed against the warehouse walls. The police were coming. Jim closed his eyes. He thought about his warm house. He thought about the roast beef Kesha had cooked. He thought about his promotion. He had traded it all. He had traded a loyal wife and a beautiful daughter for a gambling debt and a moment of fear. The police burst in, hands in the air. Jim tried to lift his hands. He couldn't. He just lay there in the slush, shivering, realizing that for the rest of his life, whether in prison or in hell, he would never be warm again. 3 months later. The penthouse did not look like a fortress anymore. It looked like a garden. Vases of pink cherry blossoms stood on every surface. White lilies floated in bowls of water. The floor-to-ceiling windows were open, letting in the sweet, balmy breeze of spring. The air smelled of rice cakes and honey. It was the Bakil, the 100th day celebration. A massive milestone. Kesha stood in front of the mirror in the master bedroom. She looked different. The fear was gone from her eyes. The exhaustion was erased from her skin. She wore a cream-colored silk dress that hugged her curves. Her hair was braided with gold thread. On her finger sat a ring, a diamond so large it felt heavy, encircled by 2 rubies. She looked like a queen. "Are you ready, Yobo?" Don Lee walked in. He wasn't wearing a tactical vest. He was wearing a soft linen suit in a light tan color. He looked younger, lighter. In his arms he held their daughter Hannah. Hannah was wearing a traditional Korean hanbok. It was bright pink and yellow, with a tiny hood. She was chubby, happy, and drooling slightly on Don's expensive lapel. Don didn't care. He looked at the baby with a reverence most men saved for gods. "She's trying to eat the ribbon," Don said seriously. He gently pulled the silk ribbon from Hannah's mouth. Kesha laughed. It was a rich, full sound. "She takes after her father. Always hungry." Don walked over to Kesha. He wrapped his free arm around her waist. He pulled her close. "The guests are here," Don said. "My mother flew in from Seoul. She is terrifying. She is currently inspecting the rice cakes to make sure they are perfect." "I'm not scared of your mother," Kesha smiled. She reached out and tickled Hannah's chin. "I survived a blizzard and a kidnapping. I can handle a Korean mother-in-law." Don chuckled. He kissed Kesha deeply. It was a possessive kiss, a reminder of the night he claimed her from the snow. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too," Kesha said. Don turned to walk out to the party. "Coming?" "Give me 1 second," Kesha said. "I just need to check something." Don nodded and carried Hannah out into the hall, murmuring to the baby in Korean about how she was the princess of the empire. Kesha picked up her phone from the dresser. It was a new phone. But she had kept the old SIM card. She had kept the old messages. She scrolled down, past the photos of Hannah, past the "I love you" texts from Don. She found the thread from New Year's Eve. "He put me out. I have nowhere to go. Please help. Who is this? Send your location." She stared at the words. 2 sentences that had changed the entire trajectory of the universe. 2 sentences that had saved her life. She typed a new message to the number. She knew Don's phone would buzz in his pocket in the other room. Best mistake of my life. She hit send. From the living room she heard a text tone. Then she heard Don's deep booming laughter. Kesha smiled. She put the phone down. She walked out of the bedroom, leaving the ghosts of the past behind, and stepped into the warmth of her forever. Sometimes the person who is supposed to love you is your enemy, and the stranger in the dark is your savior. Ladies, be honest. If a dangerous billionaire accidentally saved you, would you run away or stay in the penthouse? Tell me in the comments. Let's talk about it.